I'll have to wait for a minute for it to show up, I imagine.
Yep. A couple minutes, let everybody get logged on, and it's working out pretty well. All right, guys, just letting everybody get logged on again, and then we'll just start here in just a couple of minutes.
All right, let me go see if I can find it.
Yep, we'll just give just a couple more minutes and let everybody get logged on, and then we'll get going here. Seems to work out for a couple minutes, let everybody get logged on. We'll give everyone more minutes, and then we'll get started with tonight. Tonight's just be on coon trapping, so we'll try to, go through and have a little discussion and questions from everybody on just general coon trapping. I'll give everybody just about another minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Hey guys, how are you this evening?
Yeah, this will go 2 hours for everybody watching. So we're gonna it'll be 9 o'clock Central Time is whenever it'll end. We're starting an hour later. We're gonna start an hour later from now on. We'll go ahead and get started. And welcome everybody. This is going to be Trappers Night Live, to be focused primarily on raccoon trapping. We're going to try to answer your questions and just have, we'll cover everything from setting up a new area to, and if you have any questions about the fur handling part of the raccoons, then too. But once again, we're missing Robbie tonight. He's usually our question reader, so try to cover both bases here. So your questions right off the bat. Just write it in a second time, and like always, I've been allotting anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the stream there to try to answer any questions that we didn't get throughout the show. But anyway, if you guys would keep your questions primarily, we're going to do this on raccoon trapping, and we'll go ahead. But to start off, and I wanted to start off by just basically talking about traps that are used with the just on coon trapping. Me, uh, a lot of 1.5s and dog proofs. I have some 220s and 160s mixed in with for basically blind trail sets. But I honestly feel with run and gun tech traps down to just a couple of simple traps, and you'll only be better for yourself. But anyway, that's basically what I run. You don't need anything bigger than a 1.5 to catch coons. Coons have a tendency to chew, so I 1.5 is double jawed. How about you, Timber? What's your basic setup on traps for coon trapping?
Well, I like 220 bucket sets, and I also like dog proofs on farm locations. We can't set 1.5s here in Canada for raccoons. That's strictly legal, so we got to go all around that.
Yeah. Now we can't snare here, but do you do any snaring for coons?
Yes, I do. I do all kinds of snaring.
And now, what's your can snare? What's your basic setup if you go through and just your staking system and everything else?
Well, I try to find an old fence or an old tree or whatever to tie the snare to, and I just set it on the trail and wait for them to pass. Raccoon trails
and for somebody who's they're pretty distinct and easy to find. What about would you recommend for cable size and your locks and stuff?
Well, I like the 5/64 cable. The thin 1/16 cable will kill them quicker, but if they happen to get a front leg through, chances are they're gone 1/16. They break the cable off and they take off. With 5/64, you never have that happen, and it's just my all-around better cable.
And there was a question here. What do you use for your snare supports? Are you using 9-wire or what do you?
I think it's double 11. I think it's 2 strands of 11. It could be 12, but I think it's 11. And that's my support.
It seems to work for you. Yeah, and like I said, guys, with coons especially, you can really go to of a trap whenever you're dealing with hold. Coons, they have almost a hand, like they've got long fingers and long, almost like a thumb. That's the trigger on like a dog proof. But they also, if that hand goes numb, they'll have a tendency to chew, and you can potentially lose a critter in a trap. So, if you can use it all, or in a case of like a 1.5, if you double jaw that trap, which I'll explain double more than a second piece of usually rod stock, or the way I do mine is I weld an 8 down below the jaw, and what that does is that allows that to get his mouth inside the underneath of that jaw and chew. So if you're going out there and you want to set number 3s for coons, if you may hold them if you get them by the back foot. There's a lot better traps out there, in my opinion. Like I said, I am a Bavs. It'll hold, and like I said, by the time you double jaw them, they have a tendency to chew. I'm just going to kind of go through, I've got a list here in front of me that I made up, and I'm just going to kind of go through. So we've got the traps, and then setting locations. And that I go into an area, you guys have seen, I'm all private ground. I go into an area, I set it for everything. But whenever you're looking for a little with raccoon, is you always have to set on sign. That will be your highest percentage. Coons are not catch. It's having the ground to put up big numbers. That's the hard part. So whenever you go into an area, you need to be looking for, if you're trapping early, a cornfield. If you've got a creek running next to a cornfield, then that's, prime location. The coons are coming up out of the creek into the food source. And early in the season, you really need to be looking for, your sow in the late season. Coons will generally hold season with cold weather, and they won't be in food like they will early in the season. Late season, you're more targeting the rutting coons, the breeding coons. So depending on what time of the year you're setting to kind of take into consideration. Timber, how about you? What do you look for whenever you go to set up a location?
Well, I try to go on all the rivers that we got around and find the tracks, because your tracks are pretty well guaranteed. If you want to catch a big run of coon, you need tracks. And I searched them out and I set the rivers, and that's how I get most of mine. But it's been said over and over again: find your sign and you'll catch your raccoons, and that's the way it is for everybody. No matter if you're in the cold or you're in the warm, the same law applies.
Or with setting for coon, setting on sign is, whenever you go set a line out, you should have fairly high percentage catch. That's 75 to 80% catch. Should be what you should strive for when coon trapping. Canines, the way they move, but for the most part, whenever you're set on sign, your percentages should be really high. Like I said, trails are guys that I've got a couple in videos that I've showed. They're real defined trails. They're really easy to pick out. Larger game trails. Denning sites, if you're old building, just anywhere. And I'm sorry, I realized my microphone up. I'll try to work on that. I'll try to work on that. If you go in and do any kind of preseason scouting around the woods, you'll really be able to find the paths that these they do leave a lot of sign. Coon, he's a pretty destructive creature. You can go into cornfields or any kind of crop field been eaten and doing their business. Coon scat is pretty easy to differentiate from other things. So that basic setting up of location is real. Setting on sign is a big deal. So I'd also like to, I see there's some questions I'd like to get about that too. Now, for the most part, our rut here for the coons, it generally starts about January. I'm in what I would consider the central part of the Midwest. I'm right about the middle of the country, about whenever it starts. Now, there's something to be said. Trap coons in the cold. Now, early in the season, coon he's fed, he's big and fat, and snap hits. Coons go dormant. they can hole up for long periods of time, and early cold snaps can put a lag on the coon trapping. But later in the year, as the rut hits, it's like any other critter that's in a rut. It doesn't matter the weather conditions at all. It's something different for them coons, and they're going to be out regardless. I don't know what. When does the rut usually come in for you, Timber? You're further north than I am.
Holy shit! I'd say the end of February. Anyway, you know, our rut. Yeah, our rut's long here, and you know there's usually still 6 feet of snow by the time we get it.
Yeah. Now, as I was saying earlier, my coons they'll den up, you know, with a big cold snap. Do you find that also being further north, or do your coons act a little different?
No, well, ours will den up more than yours will. You know what I mean? Because of the cold. Sometimes we go, geez, 3 weeks or a month and not see one. They'll be completely den right up.
Yeah, and I get a lot of questions on the you know, trapping coons in the winter, you know, the late winter, and I really enjoy trapping coons in the late winter just because of the fact they're very predictable. Um, your late season, late winter period ends January 25th, so that's what I'm considering late winter whenever I talk about this. And like I said, the second week of January, really whenever I'm targeting rut and coons. And they're actually very predictable because if you know where den trees and denning sites are, it's very easy coons.
So you see here our season will go to the 1st of March, and the raccoons are still in really good shape at the 1st of March. They can be sold for, well, higher money than what they can be in the fall because they got a nice prime hide on them, you know.
I also wanted to touch on that. You know, our coons, as the rut progresses, you're targeting the big boar coons. They're the ones doing the most moving. But what happens is these coons, as they're going back and forth, they're constantly getting in and out of den sites, you know, whether it be holes in the tree or holes in a barn or something of that nature. They'll start to rub quite a bit on the back of their neck. And, you know, especially in this market, if you start getting a lot of rub coons, it's time. I don't know. Do you see many?
I've never seen that here, no, never. Like I say, the season goes right to the 1st of March, and the raccoons are still good at the 1st of March. No sign of rubbing whatsoever.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't have to deal with it so much, but I mean, you know, I know probably a lot of others have to deal with it too.
Yeah, I would imagine.
You know, you need to be. Yeah, I mean, you need to be conscious about that. If you're coons and they're rubbed, just know that the price is going to be drop drastically on them. You know, so you can see a rub pretty much from a decent distance away. I turn a lot of coons loose, and because you know, you see that rub patch on them, and there's no reason to take that animal. You know, you release him next year or earlier in the season. But you know, sometimes you can get a coon and they'll rub clear through. You know, like a deer rut, and they really get concentrated on that, and just be conscious about that.
Yep, I agree.
Questions here. We've had couple questions about the coons being generally this year the coon prices are it may not even be possible for your fur to sell this year, whether you're selling local or to NAFTA or anything. A lot's based on the Russian economy, oil prices, and everything. But for the most part, coon prices are way down this year, what they have been. And that's another thing also to think of, you know, with the rub coons, you got a coon he's going to be downgraded immediately for that, and then in a market like this, you know, that you might be talking an unsellable coon. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for releasing critters, you know, that are not going to be sold. So, this is going to be the big one, but we'll start talking sets. Many different sets for coon. Timber, I know you like using the 220s. Is there any prefer to use time of year dictates or however?
No, I just use the dog proofs on private land. You know what I mean, for the farmers and that, so I don't catch their cats and their dogs and all that their stuff. I don't like the dog proof trap, but it does have its place, you know.
I agree, and I've said that to many people. You know, the dog proof is not magical trap. You know that it's kind of portrayed. If you watch TV and watch everything else, it just seems out and you catch coons, and that is definitely not the case. There's a lot more to it than that. But I thought real quick I'd talk about some sets, and for the most part, like I said, coons are you know, it doesn't take much, but it does take a few, you know, that you got to kind of worry about and put a little bit more. You know, a basic dirt hole set for a coon it is a great set. Not only is it a great coon set, but it'll catch anything else that comes by. And I think a lot of that, you know, they want to go set out a big string of dog proofs, and you know, you're going to get a coon, a possum, or a skunk in those dog proofs. The other thing that walks by, but there's many dirt hole type set for coons. You know, like I said, with the coon trapping, I'm primarily using 1.5s. Whenever you set for this, you have to realize that, you know, a coon's not a but as he walks, he walks with front of him more so than you know, he like walks with his feet underneath his head. A coon, if you actually watch them walk, they put their front of them. So whenever you set tight to the hole, you know, there's no reason to set far back. You can use just a standard dirt hole, a portable pocket type set. You can use a PVC set, which in many of my videos, the PVC set is basically a dog-proof look-alike with a foothold placed in front of it. It's if you take a small piece and you drive it in the ground, bait that, and then bed your foothold right in front of it, then you know you've kind of got the same look like as a dog proof, but you'll take fox, you'll take everything with the footholds as well. Let's see. Another type of set, you know, is just a general blind trail set. A set will take a lot of coons, whether this be a foothold bedded in a little bit of blocking, or a 220 or a 160, depending on your regulations, bedded in a trail will take a lot of coons. I think a lot of people unset just because of its efficiency. You know, any baited set you have, the coon is naturally going to be aware of something new. But with a blind set, he's naturally moving at speeds he would not be aware of anything, and the blind sets are very, very effective.
No, I don't think so. You pop? No.
You see, I got to run 1.5 for a few years before they outlawed it here, so I got to see how effective they were.
Yeah, they remain a lot you can do with them.
Yeah, there is. And you know, guys, you can put golf balls over your DPs, and you can also put styrofoam cups over them to keep the mice out of them.
And I also want to, you know, whenever you're talking about bedding a foothold, especially with coon trapping, or just like any, but coons will dig. If they feel loose ground, you know that they will dig a trap bed or a trap up. And so, you know, having a good trap bed, you know, that's not any bigger than your trap, and having you know, proper bedding and proper cover, it is really quite important with coon trapping. You know, I think a lot of people get lackadaisical whenever they go out to set coons. You know, they put all their time and effort into the canines, but you know, a coon will dig up a set just as easy as a canine will. So you have to be aware of that and into whatever you're doing.
Hey fellas, how you doing?
Hey, Steve.
How are we doing?
Just got in from the snowy road.
Yep. Steve, here we're talking coon trapping tonight, but anyway, I know you've not been on here before, so if you'd just like to introduce yourself to the people watching and just tell you know, who you are, where you're from, anything like that.
Well, I won't give my direct address, but yeah, I'm a northern boy, Michigan, and been trapping about 40 years. So I got a couple miles under my belt, and coon trapping's one of my favorite. Haven't come close to your numbers.
Yeah, before you come on here, we was talking about different sets. So I don't know if you want to go into maybe a few of your favorite sets or just different sets you use on your coon line.
Well, usually I don't put a ton of effort into my coon trapping as far as taking the time out to make a dirt hole. I don't get lackadaisical about it because I have them dug up, but usually I set on sign, points and creeks, trails and cattails is real good for me. A lot of blind sets. I used a baited bucket set quite a bit. And I'm just getting into DPs. I've had some pretty good luck with them. I notice you got to put it right in their face because they're not going to come from a half mile around to find it. But if they're there already, you can catch them pretty quick.
We were talking earlier, you know, with DPs, you have to set on sign. You know, I try to. I mean, I put them directly in the trail. You know, you want that coon's head to hit that trap. You know, and I get a lot of questions. You know, about people saying where to set. And, you know, with a standard set, you don't want that animal to find the trap, you know, that you've bedded, but it's completely different, you know, with the dog proof. You want that animal to find that trap. You want him, you know, everything about it's obvious. You know, don't bury that dog proof and put a bunch of leaves around it and everything else. You want it to be the main focal point.
Yeah, that's definite. It's got to be in their face and out where they can see it and find it. And it's got to be a natural place where they're going to be anyhow.
Yeah,
Like,
and I know you said you just kind of got started with them, but there's been several questions come up about keeping mice out of your dog proofs. You got any tips, or what do you do with mice problems with DPs?
hold on a second. I got to turn the speaker up. There we go. You know, I haven't had a whole lot of trouble with mice. Usually, I'll put a little cat food or something in the bottom, something with a little smoky smell. And I don't know if that smoke deters the mice. I have seen some evidence, and I've had pretty good luck with a marshmallow on the trigger, and it doesn't seem like I have too much trouble. I have seen it
Yeah,
where
and
guys.
like I said,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I have seen it where guys put golf balls or ping pong balls or something like that in the top of the trap, or a cup over it, a white cup. I haven't tried that yet, but I don't have the mouse problem really.
Yeah, and you know, I'm right there with you. You know, I run, you know, quite a few dog proofs, and you know, you can mess with the golf balls and you can mess with the styrofoam cups, and to some degree, you know, there's something to be said for it. But if you're setting an area and you get a mouse in your dog proof, that mouse is going to come back every single night and steal your bait until you pull that set out.
That's right.
It's how it's going to be. You're either going to have to catch him in that dog proof, or you're going to have to pull your set. The biggest thing I've found is with your bait. Whenever you're baiting dog proofs, you know, you're not filling that whole tube up. It's a lot of smell. It's a little bit of feel, but you know, I trap in big open fields, you know, where there's a lot of mice. But the marshmallow, especially spearing a big marshmallow in a dog proof, you know, a mouse has a hard time getting to that. And the bait I use is, you know, it's a syrupy kind of bait. So even if they was to clean out the solid part of that bait, you still got that lingering. You know, I use a lot of bacon grease and syrup in my bait, and you know, you can't. I don't care how hard you scrub on that stuff, you can't get it off, and a coon will still find it. And with that being said, as long as you don't fill that tube completely full, you know, all that coon's got to do is reach his hand in there once or twice, and he's caught.
Yeah, I agree. They go a lot by their nose. If they can smell it, they're trying to get something out of it. You know, I've never really tried to catch coons in a field. I'm usually in the woods. I'll usually, when I'm running my muskrat line, I'll pop up on shore if there's an apple tree or something like that. And go from there. So I usually don't go out and specifically trap coons. I have in the past with my bucket sets and stuff. I had a pretty good sized road line that I would run every morning, quick in and out of the truck on the way to work, you know, and did pretty good with it. But usually it's not really a bycatch. I'll specifically get out of my boat and go up the shoreline a little bit, but I don't know, maybe by the shoreline and lake areas, the mice just don't hang.
Yeah, couple things I see. I see you have a fur harvester's question about where you usually sell your fur at.
In the past years, I've always sold them to a local buyer, but they're getting harder and harder to find. And the last year, I trapped hard. I sent them to NAFA and did pretty good. We had a pickup. I have to drive about 45 minutes to an hour on the side of the road. The guy kind of meets you, and then you. It was kind of hard signing my life away and handing them all my furs and not getting a check. That was kind of different. But it worked out great. All my furs sold. Of course, like I say, that was 2 years ago, I think, before the price drop. And I did pretty fair. I didn't do a whole lot more than what a local buyer would pay me, but I did pretty well.
Yeah, and you know, for the guys asking and the new guys in here, you have to realize whenever you ship your fur off to auction, you don't get any money right then. You know, it's usually you're waiting a minimum of anywhere from 3 to 5 months, depending on when you sell, what time of the year, and that's if those furs sell that year. Like in this down market, how we are now, I've got coons, well, and I've got a lot of different fur, but primarily coons that I sent up a year and a half ago that still have not sold. So, you know, I've made no money on those critters. That being said, if you sell to a local guy, you know, you're getting paid right there. So, you know, it's really kind of, it depends on how you want to get paid. Normally, you will get a little better money. Not always, but normally you'll get a little better money selling through the big auction houses, but you won't get paid, you know, right then.
Yeah, I had to wait quite a while for my first fur check. The first one was pretty good size, and then over the past 2 years, every once in a while I'll get a $7 check in the mail, and they'll tell me exactly what sold and how much I have left, and so it all works out. You just got to wait.
Yes, there's a long waiting process.
Yeah, and I see there's a
sure. No. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean it's whatever you want to do. Do you want to wait for your money, or you know, do you want to have it instant?
Well, we got no option here, so take the long wait or keep them home.
Yeah, local buyers are getting harder and harder to
I
find.
see there. Yeah. Yeah, there's not many around here. They've lost so much money over the last couple of years, and there's a lot of them not even buying this year. But anyway, there was a question there about the 220 bucket set, and you know, I run a few, but I know Steve and Timber, both you guys, you know, mentioned that you run them. So if you could just explain, you know, how you guys set them up, and maybe it's different the way you do, but just kind of let everybody know how you set up your bucket sets.
Go ahead.
Well, I just put the bait in the back of the box and the trap in front of it, tie the trap off, and give it a little bit of lure, and I'm on my way. No,
Yeah, I used to do pretty much the same thing. I used to put for a while, our regulations, I could only use a 160, and that's what I had. I only had a few 220s. So I set up my buckets with a lid on it, with a large cutout. Actually, it was like the top half of the lid, and then did a cutout so it pinched them in where they would go into the 160. I never had any trouble with a large raccoon going into the 160. I had a couple of foot catches, but not percentage-wise, not a large percent. But now they changed the regulations here. Let's see if you can see this. Give me a sec. Can you see the bucket?
Oh, yeah.
That little
It
opening
kind of
now,
makes it more of a dog proof.
yeah, that little opening can only be 6 inches tall, which is fine, but the trap has to be 6 to 8 inches back from the front. So for a coon to get in there, and I'm sure it works, but for a coon to get in there is a real commitment. I mean, he has to lay on his belly and crawl all the way in there. And it really cut the percentage of catches down. I had a lot of them that just sat there with bait all year long and never got touched. So I kind of shying away from
Yeah,
the
and
bucket set.
yeah, and I mean, I think it needs to be mentioned too with these bucket sets, guys. You know, you're either using a 155, a 160, or 220 in these bucket sets, and you really got to be conscious about where you're setting these out because I mean, you know, for you guys like me, we could set 220s on land, but you know, it's not a set that you want to put around a farmhouse. You know, I mean, it's you know, you really got to be conscious about where you set them.
Yeah, a good thing to add to that is watch what bait you use. I used to use corn mixed with molasses, and it's not really attractive to cats or dogs or anything like that. So I stay away from fish and meat.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of some bucket sets myself also. Really, the way I trap, unless I'm real close to my vehicle, I've got to walk so far. You know, a lot of times with it being on private ground, that carrying a bunch of buckets isn't really practical. But and I don't know if you guys do this, but around here they actually make square buckets. They're like 2.5 gallons, and you can go to the around here the grocery stores actually have them. It's what icing comes in, and it's a square bucket, not a round bucket. And a 220 will just fit just perfect into that bucket, and that way you don't have to do any blocking or anything else as you would like with a regular 5 gallon bucket.
I got all kinds of them.
Good old cat litter.
Yeah, cat litter buckets.
No, the restaurant up here gets the Miracle Whip in them and the margarine and all that in the square buckets, and I just go pick the buckets up and clean them out. They're free.
Yeah, I think I pay like $1.50 is when I bought all those, and I bought like 60 or 70 at one time, and I've been using them for years. But they've been collecting them, you know, for a long time.
Yeah, they last forever, as long as they don't get chewed and smashed up, but they still serve the purpose.
Hmm.
So basically, with the new bucket regulations, that's why I started switching over to DPs. And I've done fine with them.
Oh yeah, it's a learning tool, just like everything else, you know.
Yeah, definitely. You don't catch a coyote in the first well, some lucky people do, but you don't catch a coyote in the first trap you set, you know. So
Yeah.
coon aren't dumb, that's for definite.
Good evening, Chris.
Yeah, and I mean, really the one trap that we haven't talked about, you know, in depth right now is the dog proof, and you know, for those of you who've seen, you know, my videos, you know, I run a lot of dog proofs. You don't see how many 1.5s I actually run too, just for the simple fact that it's what I view, you know. But I do run, I would say probably 60-40, 60% being 1.5s, 40% being dog proofs. And the majority of the dog proofs that I run are in places where I wouldn't set a 1.5. And basically because I'm talking about cats and dogs, and I set close to a lot of houses and barns and stuff like that. Just basically because it's easier for me to get out of my truck, go walk right behind somebody's house to the creek behind them, and put in a couple dog proofs. Then go walk behind somebody's house and go walk up the creek, you know, a couple hundred yards, and settle 1.5, you know, and I get out of the way from their pets, because everybody's got 4 dogs and 6 cats running around their house around here.
Speaking
And,
of cats,
you know, whenever you understand the way that the creeks are, you know, you're still pulling the cream of the crop with the coons, and it's a speed and efficiency thing.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. You can carry a lot of dog-proof traps, and actually you can preload them and stuff a marshmallow or something in the top, and you can get a bunch of them in a milk crate and just go.
Yeah, set them before you leave the truck.
Yep. You said 100
Now,
of them. You said 100 of them, it'd give you some hand cramps.
Yeah.
yeah. Now is you know, while we're on the dog proof deal, do you guys prefer the pull trigger or the push pull trigger? You know, I mean, if somebody's watching out here and they're going to go buy their first dozen, you know, what would you suggest?
Well, in Canada, you're only allowed pull only, so you're not allowed to push and pull.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I started off with pull only. I've been watching YouTube videos and stuff, and I noticed with the push pull, you're more apt to get more bycatch, you know, like grinners and a few skunks here and there. And it doesn't seem like they would be quite as dog proof with a push trigger, in case some, you know, goofy dog might stick his paw in there or something. The trap wouldn't, you know, injure the dog. It's just, you know, you have to deal with it. But the jury's still kind of out if I'm gonna switch over or not. Right now, I'm just sticking with the pull trigger.
Yeah, and I have to agree. I've got both, and I run both, and definitely early in the season, I much prefer the pull trigger over the push pull. I would have to say, in general, though, I still prefer the pull over anything, and I'm not sure maybe if there's somebody from Wisconsin on here, but I believe you know, in Wisconsin you can set the pull triggers earlier than you can set others. Maybe some other states are like that, but you know, in the later coons and stuff, I have seen a little bit more success with the push pull just because the coons aren't as, you know, active, but I think I'm a bigger fan of the pull only type trigger.
Yeah, that's another advantage of them here in my state. I cannot set any trap within 50 feet of any water, mud puddle, creek, lake, whatever, before November 10th. But with the dog-proof traps, I can, which is a big advantage.
Okay. Yeah, I see. I was I must have been mistaken because Lee wrote in here and said it doesn't matter in Wisconsin, but I know I'd heard that somewhere. Where, I mean, there is a practical advantage to buying only the pull type trigger. Maybe it was Michigan where I'd heard that. So
Nope.
yeah, I
not
mean,
here.
for the money, you know, in your case, the pull type trigger would be it. Real quick, also before I lose this question, Pennsylvania East asked. The question is, can you target just mature male, and how? And you know, I've got an answer for that, but Steve or Timber, you guys, you care to answer that, and we'll kind of go through, because
I don't know.
I'd
I
like to
take
hear your
them.
guys' opinions on that.
I take them as they come.
I take them as they come too, but I have noticed when I was experimenting with different scents that certain ones seems like I got more male catches than female. and also certain times of the year. You go out in late winter, and the big bucks are running around from tree to tree looking for females, and you have a better chance of catching the big males.
Yeah, and that's kind of right along the line of what I was going to say. To actually go out and say I want to target just big bore coons, that it's not really feasible to do that. You know, you're going to catch, you're setting for coon, you're going to catch anything that walks by. It was like a couple weeks ago we had a guy ask a question. You know, can I set a canine set and only target coyotes as opposed to fox? And you know, depending on what you've got in your area, this, that, and the other. But no, I mean, the set is going to catch what walks into it. But along your line, that being said, the the late winter, whenever the coons are rutting, you are definitely more apt to catch uh, big bore prime rutting coon, mainly male coon. I mean, not the big boars, but mainly male coon. But no, I mean, just in general, you're not going to be able to go out and just target, uh, you know, boar coon. So you got to release them, you know, if you catch the small ones. And that was one thing I really did want to touch on tonight was the releasing of smaller immature coons. Do you guys have you done this in the past, or do you do that, or anything?
No, not me. Like I say, they're usually all pretty big ones. You know what I mean? In the spring of the year, say like the fella. And if there was a small one, he was long gone dead. You know what I mean? So there was no sense to remove him anyway.
Now I release anything small because the market isn't there. But back in the day, even medium coon I was getting, you know, $15 for. So I figured he's eating my bait. I'll put him on the stretcher.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat, you know. And you can pretty much judge. I mean, after you do several coons, you know by the size whether that coon's going to make an extra large or, you know, a 2X or a small or a medium. You know, I mean, they're not hard to judge. And, you know, uh, or this point in the with the fur market being as low as it is, you know, I release a lot of coon. You know, there's not there's no point in taking, you know, the small 8-10 pound coon that stretch out to be a large in a market like this. I mean, whenever you can't sell a 2X or a 3X, there's no reason. So I mean, in these markets where the coon is down, I release a lot of coon, and I'll say, you know, I carry a little catch pole. I've got several releases of bobcats on my channel because we can't keep bobcats, but just a little 2-foot hog catcher. You know, you can release any critter out there with, and it doesn't take any time, and it's not very difficult to release those small coons.
Yeah, don't ever try to grab them.
No, no, but I mean they're a tough critter. You know, they're not like a bobcat or something where they're real easy to choke out. You know, you can put a catch pole around a coon and you can do whatever you want with them and release them. And like I said, it's really just being you know, in today's market, I see it being a good sportsman. You know, there's no reason to take that large or medium coon right now whenever the market's down.
Sure, I agree.
I think Chris wants us to send him up
I mean,
some raccoons.
They come with a half dozen grinners,
Yeah, I'm
Chris.
sure he's got some fur up there. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. About 3 skunks. But as far as anchoring, you know, many different methods of anchoring your sets. What do you guys use?
Well, me, I'm a big fan of the cable stake there now. You know, saves rebar is too heavy, and pretty well a cable stake all the way there now.
Yeah, what a great invention that was, eh?
Yeah, you're telling me.
I got mine about 50-50. I make a cable, basically a noose on half of them. I made my cable end loop small enough. Wait a minute, how'd I work that? Yeah, I made it as tight as I could where you actually have to have the trap set to get it through the loop. If it's snapped, like if, say, somebody tries to swipe your trap, if it's snapped, it won't fit through the loop. And then I got the other half with earth anchors. Actually, the noose ones
Yeah,
work.
and
Go
I
ahead.
use, or go ahead. No, go ahead.
I use the noose ones where you can slip them around a tree because I trap around a lot of peat bogs and stuff, and the earth anchors just won't hold.
Now, I, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys have right-of-way trapping up there where you're from, right?
You have to be talking to Timber or me.
Not me.
You mean the right of way on the roads?
No, I was talking to Steve. Yeah.
You know what? I don't know if we do. I've never utilized it. If we do, I should look into that. Usually I stick with the state land, and I can trap near the road on the state land. But out of sight, out of mind is the thumb of rule on that.
Was getting at, I didn't know if you, because a lot of states do have right-of-way trapping. We don't, but I didn't know if any of you guys utilize drags, to try to get the critters off out of the view of public and did anything like that.
Yeah, I do use drags. I shy away from it with coon, though. I just set the trap out of sight behind the thicket or behind the log, whatever, because I've actually gone into my sets and had to climb trees to get the coons down, which isn't fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, as far as anchor systems, I think I pretty much showed what I've used, but I'm big on cable sticks, of course. I mean, rebar is almost a thing of the past. But with my cable stakes, I'm a big fan of fence staples, and you can go into an area. A lot of time if you're setting a, a creek bank, or if you can't get an anchor to hold, or you've got big rain coming, it's real easy. Just a 2-inch fence staple in a side of a tree or stump or decent sized drag or toggle will hold any coon out there. I toggle my 1.5s and my dog proofs and everything with fence staples. And I just carry a pair of fence pliers, and you can come and pull the fence staple out, and you can a lot of times reuse them. And if you can't, you can take them with you, and you don't have to worry about farmers running over the fence staples, with their tractors or anything else. So that the way my method's set up, I can either use one or the other. With the noose kind of deal where you're tying around a tree, I guess if there was no tree around the area, you'd kind of be out of luck. But with this setup I've got, I walk in with one thing. I can either stake out in the open or anchor to a tree. So that's just what works for me.
Right. I have used a noose thing on like dead logs laying down, and I've never had a pull off. It actually keeps tightening the more the coon pulls, so it sticks pretty good to dead logs too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it really doesn't take much to hold a coon. A log 4 or 5 feet long, that's 2 inches in diameter, very rare thing 3 or 4 feet. So as far as size-wise, you know, you don't have to anchor to a truck or anything. You know, they're not going to move them too much.
Yeah, I think once they realize they're snagged up, they don't pull too hard. Did you see that question from James Dean about the rubs?
I never.
Yeah, yeah. And we touched on it. We might have touched on this before you joined us tonight, but talk about rub spot. It makes a big difference on price. Like we talked before, and I'll just kind of go back. But if I see a coon that's got a rub on it, I'll release him. Just start rubbing in the rut, and whenever they do, it's time to get out of there. Your coon will definitely be downgraded by having a rub spot, and in a market like we are in now, that downgrade is very severe with the price fur is now.
I've never had any problem with rubs on coons. Can they actually see it through the leather?
Yes. Yes. A lot of times what happens, and it all depends on whenever the rut goes. Because like I was saying before, our season here ends January 25th. And the rut here usually starts about the second week of January. So you're usually trapping about 2 weeks of the rut. You know, this year it happened a lot later. And I think a lot of that had to do with the warm winter we had. But some years, like 2 years ago, we had that real cold winter, and I was getting rubbed coons, even the females, you know, just because they were coming in and out of the den so much. I was getting them early into January, and sometimes it'll be so severe that the rub spot will actually go through the skin. You know, you'll skin out the coon, and they'll rub completely through their hide, and it'll be kind of like a blister is formed. It's kind of weird. You know, I've seen this, and a lot of people call them zombie coons. You know, it's crazy how their hormones and everything drive them, but they're able to cope with, you know, an open wound like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's pretty tough too.
And it'll also, I don't know if, let's see that coon right there. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you'll see on coons, especially the big boars, after years and years, it'll scar where they're rubbing so much, and you know, sometimes you can hit one of those scars, you know, and they'll pop open real easy whenever you're fleshing them. But you can see the scars over time. A lot of times it'll make like a darker area in the hide, you know, from years and years of those coons rubbing. So yeah, it's quite a big deal. And like I said, with the prices the way they are, you get rubbed coons, it's time to either get out of these.
Yeah, if they're rubbing that hard. There's that hound.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, I love it. Are you kidding?
We're getting snow now, and he thinks he's hearing all sorts of stuff tonight. Trying to get caught up on the questions here.
I'm answering a few of the.
See if we've missed anything.
Yeah, a lot of
I
guys
appreciate that.
talking about scars on coons and beavers. Yeah, big time, especially when the population is real high. There was a point in time, when the fur prices first started going up on the last boom, nobody was trapping around here for quite a few years, and I had populations of everything. And I had to start setting 2 or 3 buckets at each location, because I'd get one coon in the 160 and have other coons biting it in the rear end trying to get at the bait.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was since you brought it up, like I said, I'm kind of following a list. And I know we're going to get off topic a lot, but since you brought it up about setting multiple sets, that was one thing I really wanted to touch on. Is about setting multiple sets and gang setting for coons. You know, you guys have seen my video. I put at least 2 sets at every location, and I've always said, you know, you're missing animals if you're only putting 1 set at location, especially with coons. You know, a lot of times coons travel in pairs, you know, or family groups, and you're really doing yourself a favor if you're going to go to the time of making a set and everything else. There's always room for another set, and these sets don't have to be very far away. You can put 3 sets in a 20-foot area. You know, just set them so where they don't get tangled up in each other. But it's really beneficial to you to set multiple sets per location.
I was going to add something to that, and I totally lost it.
Yeah, it's always better
Oh.
to gang set, no matter what you're setting for. You know what I mean? Suppose it's raccoon or coyote, always better to gang set.
Yeah, if you need convincing of that, just punch in, find a trail cam on somebody's coon sets, and it's like, holy smokes, I've seen 6 or 7 at a time come through.
Yeah, I mean, and you can go in and set, you know, usually what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll set an area and I'll have 1 dog proof and then 1 with a foothold. And, um, you know, basically just because I want to pick up whatever's there. But, you know, you can mix them up. You don't always have to set the same set 3 times in that location, but it is definitely to your benefit to gang set an area.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, I agree.
There's a good question from Levi Gray, 85. I think that's what it, yeah.
Yeah, I see that there. Basically, the question is, do you ever run out of coon in an area, and when is it time to move to a new location? And you know, there's several good questions there that we can talk about in there. But yeah, I'll start off and say, do you ever run out of coon in an area? Me personally, the way I trap, I'm not in there for the long haul. I'm in there for 4 or 5 days. I'm gonna pull the cream of the crop off, and then I'm out of there. I'm not gonna spend a week or 2 trying to catch, you know, one smart critter or 1 stubborn critter. That being said, will you run out of an area of coon? Yes, you trap the cream of the crop, the population are going to be down, but there's a reason those coon were there in the first place. If that area holds coon 1 year, it's naturally going to bring coon in every year. That's a lot of my locations. You know, I trap every single year, and my catch numbers, they stay up every year. Just because if you've got an area that's good enough to hold critters, you take critters out of that area, there's always going to be something there to move back in. I don't know how you guys feel about that too, but especially in my area, that's how I go with that.
Well, a good saying is a good area will always get overlapped. There'll always be another animal to replace it. You know what I mean? And it'll keep going and going. Well, pretty well forever.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've noticed that big bore coon tend to be a little territorial, and they'll actually keep other coons away from like a good food source, a cornfield, you know, his certain corner of the cornfield. And I've also noticed that when you catch rather large boar coon or a couple of them, that other coons right away will move right into that area like they're taking over. So I've actually trapped an area where the catch slowed way down, left for a month, came back and set it again, just out of, I was either bored or, needed new territory, whatever, and had good luck again within a month. And, raccoons are pretty
Yeah, I mean,
prolific, so I don't think you could ever run out of coons unless you just hammered them 24/7.
yeah, and I mean, the areas that have a population of critter is is an area that will usually environmental happens. It's going to always hold critters. There's a reason that they're there. But then the second part of his question is, or it was along the line of, when do you move? When is it time to leave? So I don't know what you guys, if you're coon trapping, when do you say good enough? When do you guys usually get out of the area?
When the catch gets down for a few days, it's like I trap my deer spots, my deer feeders, and if I got 6 or 8 coon and I go in and I catch the 6 or 8 coon, and there's no more on the cameras, well, I might as well pick up and move my trap somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to have a camera out. Usually my coon sets are on the way to somewhere else I'm going to be anyhow, so I might leave them. I'll target a certain apple tree, and after about a week, if my catch really drops, I'll just kind of hopscotch onto the next decent area or the next territory. So usually about a week, maybe a little bit less, you can pretty much, get the cream of the crop and then move on.
Yeah, I agree. A lot depends. If you're sitting on an area all year, you're gonna have a lot of empty days. But the way I trap is, I work full time, so a lot of my big moves are happening on the weekends. So my coon sets set all week, during the work week, 5 days, and I mean, even if they're catching, I mean, I'll pull a set if it catches on Friday just to get to a new area, on Saturday. But if I walk by a coon set and it hadn't had a coon in it for 2, 3, or I'd say 3 or 4 nights is usually my standard. It's pulled and it's gone. And the reason is you're setting on sign. You should have a real high percentage coon trapping if you're setting on sign. Now all this, weather comes into effect. If you have a snowstorm, early in the year and it shuts the coon down, then yes, they might hole up and they might not move. But for the most part, it's a numbers game and it's moving. Fresh sets every day, so I'm not gonna let it set very long before I pull it and move.
I agree.
Yeah.
There was a question here that's
Go
been
ahead.
asked a couple of times. Steve, I'll answer this one. Then if you've got one that we're starting to get quite a few questions. But anyway, guy asked about having pullouts with DPs. If you're having a pullout with a DP, a coon pulling out of the trap, if you're using the pull type only trigger, what is happening most likely is that the coon is being able to grab onto something nearby and gain leverage.
Exactly.
The way a dog proof works as opposed to a foothold trap is there's a big difference. A dog proof it just wrist basically against a tube, and with dog proofs especially, you need to be very conscious about where you make your sets. You can't go set a dog proof in, say, a thick bunch of willows or areas where he can get leverage with another hand and pull. You need to clean out the area around the set. If you need to do that, do that. Set in the open a lot of times. if you're anchoring to trees, you need good swivel points, but you can't let that coon wrap all the way around that tree, get tight, and then grab a hold of something. If you've got roots that he can dig up, any little thing. But if you have a pull out in a dog proof, more than likely it's something you did to give the coon leverage.
Exactly.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, I mean, you should not have pullouts with dog proofs. The trap itself is designed not to, it's designed to work basically. And if you do your part, there should be no flaw in that. I don't know. Do we have another question there we need to get to, Steve?
Levi Gray 85 just asked for good areas. I tend to like food. Find the food, you'll find the coon.
Holy shit, the questions are flying
Yep,
so
I
fast.
agree. And
I can't keep track of them.
yeah, food and in the wintertime, we've talked about this already, but you're targeting rut and coon with denning spots. And
Right.
I'll also just say, as questions came up few different times tonight. Tonight we were talking about coon trapping. We're not going to discuss garment making or anything else. This is going to be focused on trapping of coons. So we'll just stay on topic tonight. But another thing I wanted to touch on, and it's all about speed and efficiency basically, and this may apply to some people and this may not apply to you, but for me, I put up fairly decent numbers every year. Coon, I don't put up, I don't put up just very little coon. I've got a lot of area that I trap, and that is the reason that I can put up the numbers I can. If you've got an area of ground that's 20 acres, you're not going to be able to trap that ground all winter long and put up 100 coon. It's just not going to work that way. So, for those of you who want to to really get into it and get a good line established, it takes a lot of ground. And not only does it take a lot of ground, it takes a lot of moving. You hear me say, I let a set for 3 or 4 days. That's it. I'm gone. I'm moving. And you're moving the majority of your sets every 3 or 4 days. You can kind of see how much ground you have to have to be able to trap. And along with having that ground is making new sets every single day. And I keep a fairly good log book with me. It's the only way I can keep track of everything. But you need 20 to 30% every day of new sets. And those new sets will be with coon trapping especially, your numbers come in the first or second night. After that, it falls off drastically. It's real similar to like muskrat trapping. So those fresh sets is what what keeps your numbers up.
Yeah, it's real easy to get lackadaisical sometimes. You start getting into a routine and just kind of put your head down and walk your route and, leave stuff sit there night after night, or actually week after week. I found a good habit that I got into is before I check my traps, I try to go out and make 4 or 5 new sets. Then I'll run my line and check it. That way I keep the incentive up and you're not tired at the end of the day trying to make new sets. I've actually
I agree.
I've actually caught myself walking past a great place to put in a dog proof or whatever and just kind of went, nah, I'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, traps that are sitting in the back of your truck aren't going to catch you any fur. I mean, you get the traps, set them. I mean, it's unless you're just sitting there staring at them, you need everything you've got in the ground. I have a lot of traps, but during a season, a lot of them are in the ground. You keep that rotation going.
Sure, it's like deer hunting from the couch.
Yeah, and I mean along your line, what you said, you try to make your sets before you go to check. And I'll just kind of, like I said, I work full time, and over the years I put trail cameras up in front of a lot of my coon sets, and I have found that there's a lot of activity, especially with coons, just before daylight. And years and years ago, I used to do a lot of my checking before work, and until I figured out, I was scaring off. I was losing a lot of fur because of that, because I was going in at 4:30, 5 o'clock to check these sets, and that's whenever the critters were moving. So now, the way I run my line all year long is in the morning I will go and I will set new locations. Um, I'll set them. I'll go to work. I'll get off work, and I'll go check. And that allows the critters to basically have all night to work those sets. And once you get in that rotation, it's real easy to get into. We have a 24-hour check rule here. I have to check my sets every single day. So, like you said, Steve, getting lackadaisical. You don't check anything in the morning, and you have to check it at night. And it's a good rotation to get into.
Yeah. Another good way I mix it up a little bit, I'll actually run my line backwards once in a while just for the change of pace and change of scenery.
Yeah, and while we're on that, I run mine. Everything depends on where I work, but I try to have it set up where I make a loop. And like I said, morning will be setting, and the evening will be checking. But the more you can keep yourself from backtracking, the more efficient you can be. And I mean, that's all it is. Coon trapping is nothing but repetition and speed and efficiency. Once you have a few good sets down and good locations, it's just running through the motions.
Yeah, you can't.
And there's a couple guys I'm going to interrupt real quick, but I'm sorry, Steve, I'll interrupt. There will, if you read the description, there's no talk of dispatch here in comments. If you PM me, personal message me, I'll answer anything, but we're not gonna start that in the comments. So thank you guys. I'm sorry, Steve. Go ahead and
I
finish
forgot
there.
what I was going to say, but it wasn't a big deal. There was a younger guy on there said he's just starting out and he's looking for bait. Anything sweet, anything that smells real sweet. Coon love peanut butter. They love bananas. I've had good luck with maple syrup. You can just dump it on some cat food or whatever. Try to find their natural food like wild grapevines. If you can find them out in the wild, apple trees are really nice when the apples are dropping. So anything that you like to eat, a raccoon will eat.
And more.
Yeah, and for a guy starting out, there is no reason to, I mean, most guys starting out are on somewhat of a budget. I think commercial coon lures are very, very overrated. Bait and lures, I should say. there's no reason to go out and spend that kind of money. I really think it's overrated. I mean, I make all my own bait, of course, but even a guy starting out, we I primarily stay with the sweet stuff just because I feel it keeps the possums down. It doesn't always. You still catch a lot of possums, but a coon is not going to pass up anything sweet. But you can always find, things around the house at the grocery store that's much, much cheaper than your commercial type produced coon baits and lures.
Sure. You can also go to a health food store and buy essential oils, like anise is really good, and they'll have peppermint oil, which works really good, and it costs a couple bucks per ounce, but that little ounce goes a long, long way. You can trap, depending on how many traps you run, of course, you can get, a couple of years out of it. And basically, it's the same stuff the lure makers use to get the smell. A lot of coon lure smells terrific, unlike coyote lure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and like I said, I primarily tend to go with my bait towards a sweeter smelling lure, especially for my dog proofs. I kind of mix it up with my dirt holes just because, like I said, with the dirt holes, you've got a foothold on them, and you still want to be able to catch whatever walks by. But even if you're using your sweet bait in your dirt holes, maybe the canines won't work that dirt hole as good with that bait, but throw a little caster in the lip of the hole, and that caster will. That's a good curiosity lure for any animal. Will work that. So there's all sorts of different ways to go about mixing it up without having to spend a ton of money on it.
Yeah, I agree. Timber, you should have some stuff to add to that. You're all about saving the money.
Yeah. No, I go down to the trap and supply dealer, and everything that don't sell, that's what I buy. All that stuff that he put from $6 down to $3, I buy all that stuff.
There you go.
That's the stuff I use. Hey, Les. I'm going to step out for 1 second.
There's a good question from Seth Bissett. How do you keep cats out of your sets?
Well, I'll start off, but there's no real way to do it 100%. But definitely, the sweeter the bait you use, will definitely have a big impact on your sets. Don't use a lure. I shouldn't say I've perfected it, but I've done a lot experimenting over the years with this, just because I set around a lot of barns and pastures, cattle areas, where they do have the cats around. And I'm not talking feral cats. I'm talking, pet wise. But the sweeter the bait you use, a cat usually will not mess with the set. Also, how to use a dog proof. If you've got areas with cats in it, don't put a foothold there. It's that simple. A DP baited with something that smells real strong of strawberries is definitely not going to have near the effect on that cat that a dirt hole baited with meat-based bait will.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely stay away from fish smell.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be conscious about it more than anything. Different areas, require a little bit more thinking than others to be able to, get around the incidental catches. It only takes one incidental catch to lose a piece of property.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to get the farmer's mouser, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something you got to be aware of. You know, there's no 100%, but I mean, there's things you can do to definitely up your odds.
What's the biggest coon you've ever caught?
Me personally, the biggest one I ever caught was right at 31 pounds, and that's it. It was actually in a kind of a silage area for cows. I was trapping it around a lot of feeders and stuff for cows, and the coon had been in there. It was early in the season, and he was in there just gorging himself. But yeah, 31 pounds. That was I think 3 or 4 years ago I caught him. But most of my coons average in the anywhere from the high teens to low 20s. So a 31 pounder is definitely much bigger than what I usually get.
Wow, did he carry you home?
He was half the size of my dog. He was a big coon. I mean, there was no way that coon, would have got that big, being out, in the wild, so to speak. He was there eating all that feed and everything all summer. I get a kick out of those people though. I hear a lot of guys, they'll bring me a picture of a coon, or show me one on their, oh, this was a 35, this was a 40-pound coon, and you can just tell, the thing's not it's not over 15, 20 pounds, A coon, I think, is something that guys really, really exaggerate the weight on, without actually putting a scale on it. But I just kind of find it funny.
Yeah, when that fur's all puffed out, they look pretty fat. There's a good way to judge them when you're trapping by water and using drowning sets, how small a big coon looks when he's all wet.
Yeah, a 20-pound coon, whenever he's all wet, looks really pretty small.
Yeah, I think my biggest one's about probably 25 or 30 pounds. I mean, you catch a bunch at about 20, and then every once in a while you'll get a big one. I see Seth there said he got one of 40 pounds by a cornfield. Must have been eating a lot of corn.
Yeah. Bet that thing couldn't walk. One other thing we haven't really covered, and I kind of wanted to touch on it. We've mainly been talking about land sets for coons, but I wanted to touch on the water sets too. I mean, because there is a difference as far as how you set. So, Steve, you use any water sets?
Not specifically for coon. Usually, if I find like a sandbar in a creek or something like that, or a little point of land going out into a lake, yeah, sure, that's a great spot. Or maybe a dead log that, you can see like chewed up crayfish on it or crawfish, depending if you're southern, and stuff like that. Or a log crossing a creek is very good. I would consider that a water set. But not too many. I don't go through the trouble of using a pocket set. Am I reading your mind?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Yeah.
I figured I'll make a pocket set in an area that looks real minky, but I figured that takes an extra few minutes. Where right up on the bank I can throw in 2 or 3 DPs and be gone. But I'll make a pocket set in a very good-looking mink area, hoping for either.
No, I'll
Yeah,
go
I
down.
agree, and I don't know if you found this in the past. Or go ahead, Timber.
I said I go down to the river with a couple dozen dog proofs, and I get a few numbers right there. You know what I mean? But like I say, we're not allowed foot traps here for coon, so you can't go make a pocket set or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean there is something to be said, you know, about setting land sets for coon, but I don't know if you guys have found this, but uh, you know, everybody wants to think that the coons stay just in the creeks, and that is definitely not the case. You know, there is really something to be said about setting the high banks for coons, or outside of the water per se. So that's primarily, in my experience, where your numbers come from. But as far as setting water sets, like you said, if it's in an area, you know, it looks like you can catch something else. You know, I'll set a dog proof on a trail where they go into the water, put it right in front of them. I do use pocket sets quite a bit, just just in areas, you know, that would better prefer a pocket set than something else. Um, Here in Illinois, we can use exposed bait in water sets, so uh, I don't use them much just with the hassle of carrying everything in. But there's something to be said, like a fish stick type set, you know, where you have basically a piece of rebar or a stick or something with a fish head sticking just above the water and a couple traps right around that. So I mean, there's a lot of good water sets out there. Um, but especially as it gets later in the year, you'll find that those coons, they really tend to run the high banks a lot more than they actually do get down in the water.
Sure, I agree.
I used to use a lot of PVC pipes back when we were allowed to use the foot traps, and they were great producers.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what I call the PVC set. I don't know what the actual name is, or if there is even a name for it, but I run a lot of those in front of, or actually, I guess the PVC behind the 1.5. It's definitely a killer set. As far as using conifers, I see this question about 160s or 220s. For those of you that are starting out, make sure you can use 220s on land. A lot of states have a lot of different regulations, so you know, just because you see guys on YouTube setting 220s does not mean that you can. You know, definitely a 220 is a 7-inch trap. It's it's going to be, you know, it's going to look more open as far as a 160. But here in Illinois, I can use 220s on land, but there are definitely areas that a 160 just fit better in, you know. So I wouldn't say really one is better than the other, uh, but they each have their own place.
Yeah, I agree with that. Somebody up above that asked which are better, conibears or foot traps or DPs. They all have their place. You have to be very, very conscious of where you're setting conibear traps, because there's, you know, once you catch a critter in a conibear, there's no letting them go. So all the traps work great. They all work equally well. Certain ones should be set in certain places. You know, you don't want to use a big conibear trap near a barn or anywhere where there could be pets. So if you can get into the deep woods, yeah, sure, they work great. And, you know, but the DPs are probably a little bit more user-friendly, so to speak. But they all do work, I would say, equally.
Yeah, I agree. There was a question here I'll ask before I forget it or lose it, but the question was coons into an area, and I'll just Timber, I know you probably got a lot to say about this, but here we can't pre-bait. It's it's not it's not legal. So you should, if you are thinking about pre-bait, make sure you check your laws, because it's, you know, in some places it's not legal, or feasible, you know, depending on where you're trapping and everything else. But for me, no, I don't pre-bait. I can't. But if you guys like to touch on that.
Well, yes, I can pre-bait, and I can pre-bait for everything we got, right down to moose, bear, and deer. You know, so pre-baiting for raccoons is a little bit easier, and I take a lot of them off of my deer feeders, and I can catch big numbers like that really, really quick. And but I just stop at the restaurant and I pick up the buckets of old food and I go dump them out in the side of the woods and just wait for the raccoons to come. And you know, every few you get, the better, right?
That's right. I agree. We can pre-bait here. You just can't have a trap in the woods. So I'll set out, and it's also a good way to scout. I'll set out a bucket set without the trap, with, you know, a fist-size piece of bait in it that I'm going to use, and I kind of use that not necessarily to bring the coons in, but just to kind of scout to see what's in the area. It's a little bit quicker way of scouting, you know, when you're running a full-time job and doing what you can do.
Yeah, it is.
But I've had a lot of deer hunters pat me on the back when I, you know, took 5 or 6 coons off their deer feeders.
But I know, Stuart, even you can agree with me. If you can pre-bait, you can rack up big numbers. There's no reason why you can't do, you know.
Oh yeah, I if I could, I would. Don't get me wrong. You know, there's something to be said about conditioning animals, you know, and then having them right there. I agree. Just to touch on this again here, let's see. For those of you who are trying to personal message me, it's real simple. You go to my channel, you click About on the page. After About, there'll be a little box that says Send Message, and that is a personal message. It's viewed only between the sender and the receiver. Also, there was a bunch of questions and comments I saw about the preferred foothold for coon. I touched on this earlier, but for anybody who's watching again, I figured we'd touch on this again. My preferred foothold is a 1.5 double jaw. I'll say it again, you got to be aware that you can actually get too big of a trap for coon. You know, you need to be setting for what you're catching. So my preference is a 1.5 that's double jawed. I don't know, Steve.
I agree. I like to keep the trap as small as I can and still, you know, be practical. I've held coon in a number 1, occasionally long spring. I just started using Duke coil springs number 1s, and had really good luck with coon. It's hard to get their foot in it because it's such a small target, but it works well. And I agree, stay away from the big traps because you know, once that foot gets numb, you never know what could happen. I don't know if you want to discuss that or not.
Yeah, I touched on the reason that I prefer a double jaw, just because a coon. I mean, he will chew his foot if he can get at it. So, yeah, I mean that's really about all I said with it. But just the reason I actually use the double jaw.
Right.
And here's another question. How careful are you guys of diseases? Well, I always use rubber gloves when I skin my catch.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I use rubber gloves whenever I handle, you know, any critter. Whenever I open him up to skin him, generally whenever I'm in the field, I've got gloves on too. Like Steve, like I see you just said, if a coon looks sick, you know, there's a difference between him being pissed off and there's a difference between him having, rabies or being real sick. Anything like that, definitely stay away from. But I think just being conscious, wearing rubber gloves, cleaning up after yourself is the biggest thing. And I'll touch on this too, just because I have a dog, right here. As far as the critters being around your pets, big thing with coons is rabies and distemper. Coons are big carriers of rabies, and they're big carriers of distemper. Same are skunks. So, just keep your dogs healthy and have their shots, and you should be good.
You got that hound dog trained?
To some degree, I think.
He barked right on cue. Yeah, I'd like to add to that, especially if you're around a town or dumpsters or a dump. I would think the coon are a little bit more apt, or if there's a real high population, they're more apt to be have diseases. So if you see coons running all over the road at night and stuff, be a little extra careful when the population's way up.
Yeah, because you never know.
That's another plus to trapping, by the way, is it really cuts down on the population and helps prevent the spread of disease.
No, I agree. There's no animal dies easy naturally, so, as far as taking care of populations and everything else, it's definitely better than, an animal starving to death or anything.
I agree.
For those of you that there seems to be a lot of questions and comments about the personal message thing, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure if you're on a cell phone and you don't have the desktop page pulled up, I'm pretty sure it won't let you send a personal message. You can either change like if you're on a phone or something like that, I'm pretty sure you can change it to a desktop page, and then you will be able to go through the personal message.
Pennsylvania, you should be able to call the DNR.
Also,
go ahead, Coon Creek.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. No, go ahead.
That's something, Pennsylvania, you're going to have to look into. I wouldn't ask somebody else's word about it. I'd check in it myself.
Yeah, I agree. And for you guys that are watching, the stuff that we talk about may not be legal or available, in your state. I think it's, the internet and YouTube and things like that have really helped the spread of knowledge, for us as a trapping community. But I think it's also hurt us in respect that there's a lot of guys out there that don't actually look into their state's rules, because I mean every state, and even like Timber U up in Canada, the rules and regulations are so different that without you being aware of your rules and regulations, if you go out there and do something wrong, it comes back on all of us,
That's it.
so just be aware, and and know your regulations and how you can do and what you can do before you go out there.
Yeah, here in the States, sometimes it's so micro. We have certain counties in Michigan where you can't trap or hunt.
Yeah, and I mean, that just goes back to the trapper himself. I mean, that's just being a good sportsman and outdoorsman, is knowing all your rules and regulations. Because like I said, it comes back on all of us as as a whole, as a community, whenever things like that are not taken care of properly.
Yep. We get a new hunting and trapping digest or guide every year, and I read that thing about 5 times through. A lot of it's lawyer jargon.
I don't know. I think Stuart's the
I
only.
see a question here. Go ahead, Timber.
I said somebody was asking about a washer machine to wash their furs. I said I think that you were about the only one that I know has got one.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that was the one thing. The last thing I had that I wanted to touch on was, just a little bit of the fur handling. I don't want to, get into the all depth detail because we'll say as far as cleaning pelts. For those of you that have watched my videos in the past, you know that I wash all my fur, and I've machine and I will say I've seen an increase in price. There is something to be said for having good clean fur, especially whenever you're like me and you're not up in the area that has the best of the best. Before I got a washing machine, the best way I found to do the cleaning was you just get a 55-gallon drum, and I fill it about 3/4 the way full. That's quite a bit of water in there, and you can take your coons after they're skinned, and or even I guess if they were still on the carcass, but I always did it whenever they were skinned, and you can dunk those coons in there, and you can wash them that much water in that bucket. Then by the next day, usually all that dirt and sediment, it settles down into the bottom of that drum, and you end up with fairly clean water, and you can just keep repeating that process. I mean, a garden hose here really isn't, with our cold weather we have, I couldn't be worrying about freezing hoses and everything else, but that's the way I do.
I agree. Usually I wash mine in a 5-gallon bucket, a little bit of dish soap, and water right out of the hose, maybe a little lukewarm water just to save my hands from freezing in the fall, and give them a couple quick dunks, and then I'll have a bucket of clean water just to get the little bit of soap out, give them a good shake and a squeeze, and hang them up to dry. Excuse me.
Well, the animals that I washed in my lifetime are very, very few. I never seen no need to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're trapping, an area where they're not getting dirty, but a critter is naturally dirty, but I mean, especially with the ones you catch, the big mud balls and everything else. That's the way I do. I mean, not that it's for everybody, but it's ways out there. Also, I know this was asked a couple times, so I just wanted to touch on it. And then also, we're kind of getting close to the end, so I'll ask anybody for their final questions. But as far as the big deal with wood and wire on put up, both are still accepted as far as standards by the auction companies. But I will say, if you're new and getting into it, spend the money on either making or buying wood stretchers. They will pay for themselves. Just the simple fact of being uniform and being able to pin the skirt of your coons completely straight is definitely a benefit. I put coon on wires for years, and I sold them for years, and I never, there's nothing wrong with that, but uh, definitely I would think that wood is a better material to put up.
And I agree 100%.
I agree 200%.
From the muskrat right to the raccoons.
Yep, I agree. And also next week, our topic's going to be on beaver. For those of you wondering, we're gonna discuss beaver trapping just like we did tonight with the coons. The question coming in about having the question is it okay to have a little fat on the coon when boarding? Kind of vague with that question. How much is a little? Ideally, you want everything off the coon. Uh, the drying process will melt some of the fat, but you definitely want to do your best you can at getting the thing fleshed completely.
Yeah, and if I'll stick something on that, when you're done your raccoon or whatever, all the grease should be off it. All the fat should be off.
He might have been talking about greasy spots in the fur.
Yeah. In that case, if you have any fat that is in the fur, definitely want to get those out. That things like that will cause improper drying and could potentially lead to the fur slipping.
Yeah, you can use a good handful of sawdust and rub it in real well. Will help pull that out of there. That's basically what they use to clean the fur at the auction houses anyhow.
Yeah.
Just a couple questions here. A guy asked about half-inch plywood for stretchers. It can be done. It is definitely not the best thing. The problem with the plywood is it's the being plywood and having the plies in it. It definitely has a critter has a tendency to hang up on the board. I mean, you got to realize you're boarding this critter fur in, so you got to be able to pull them off the board. Like I said, it can be done, but it's definitely not ideal.
Yeah,
Also, any drying agents? Go ahead, Steve.
yeah, I was going to add to that. If you have to use plywood boards, make sure you sand the edges very, very well, and take a little chunk of paraffin wax and rub on there, and it will help keep the splinters down. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you can also use duct tape. I've seen guys just use duct tape on the edge of the plywood. As far as drying agents, I mean this is getting into the fur handling, but we'll still touch on this quick before we end it. Um, no, if you use borax per se, which is primarily what you use as far as a drying agent on a coon, it has a tendency to discolor the pelt. It's not bad. It has nothing to do with the pelt being good or bad, but it will discolor the pelt in an area. And a lot of fur is based on presentation. If your put up is correct and you do everything right, there's absolutely no need to use any sort of drying agents. Low humidity and air movement is your biggest friend.
There's a good one for you, Stuart. When are the fur
Uh,
prices going up? The whole world's waiting for your answer.
all right. Well, here it is.
Where's that crystal ball?
Wait for it now. Wait for it.
Come on,
This
come
is
on,
the
come on,
big
come
one.
on.
Wait. Fur prices. Fur prices are based on the world economy, just like anything else. Watch oil prices. Whenever you see oil bust over $75 a barrel, you will start to see fur rise. Watch the Chinese economy. The big buyers of fur, whenever their economies get better, fur prices will also go up. It's like anything. It's all based off of money, and whenever there's a demand for it and money there, things will sell. As far as when it's going to go up, my crystal ball, it's blank on that one. So,
If you see Russia getting back into the fur trade, catch every raccoon you can catch.
yeah, after they take the 2 million that's in storage.
Shh.
But no, NAFA did send out a letter, and it was several months back, and in that letter they basically said that that's what they said was whenever you start seeing oil become over $75 a barrel, that is whenever you're going to start seeing prices rise. I mean, you're never going to go make money coon trapping whenever gas is $1.50 a gallon. You know, you're going to make money whenever it's $3 and $4 a gallon. One quick question's been asked. Does blood at your coon set affect catching future raccoons at your set? Everybody has their own opinion on this. I say no. It's no different than blood at a canine set. It's a disturbance. It's a curiosity thing. I have found no.
Yeah, I agree. I answered.
Steve, I don't know. Do you guys differ from that?
I agree. I answered that question about 3 times on there. Maybe you didn't see it, but I've never had a problem with
Okay.
blood at a coon set. Matter of fact, it may even bring more in. I mean, they eat anything anyhow. Why not a little blood?
If it was a great big mess, I would
Yeah.
try to clean a little bit up, you know, and throw it to the side. But other than that, no, you got no worries.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. It's way overrated what people think about it.
No, you can't send fur to NAFA without stretching it.
and drying.
Yeah. If they're still having their green program, you still can. I don't know if they stopped it this year or not, but the last 2 years they did have a green program where you could send in green fur.
No kidding. I
I'm
didn't
not
hear.
sure if they're taking anything this year. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're taking anything this year, but I know the last 2 years that they took green fur. That being said, you're always going to get more money if your put up is correct and proper. You're always going to make more money selling put up.
You can lake life until you get really, really quick at it, and then you don't need it no more.
Yeah, as far as using them in the past, you know, I wear knee pads just for the simple fact I don't like having, you know, wet knees or, you know, muddy clothes and stuff. But whether people contradict me or not, you make a set, that critter is going to know that something is up. He's going to know you've been there. So just having knee imprints or a mat down is not going to make or break the set.
Yeah, that's a good idea, buddy. Just a pair of hip waders is all you need till you get faster at making them.
Yeah, I'd wear they're called Yoder boots. They're kind of a hip wader / briar-proof material. They work great, but centered a set is a whole different thing. But anyway, guys, like I said, I try to keep this 2 hours so everybody watching, you know, can kind of go about their business, and you know, we kind of keep this about the same time. So I'll just give just a couple more minutes here for anybody to ask any final questions, and then we'll say our goodbyes for this week. And like I said, next week is going to be we're going to do it on beaver trapping.
Good night, Les. Thanks for dropping by.
Lake Life, you might have a better chance if you go to YouTube, punch in Coon Creek Outdoors, and that will take you to his channel. You might have to leave chat.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I believe you have to be on like a desktop page. I think, I'm not real sure, but. Anyway, guys, all right, we're going to say our goodbyes here. Thank you, everybody, for coming in and sitting in with us. So we'll be on next week at 7 o'clock Central Time, and we're going to do it on beaver trapping. So thank you, guys. All right, guys, I'll shut her down, and if you stay with us, you guys say your goodnights, and then we'll be out of here.
All right, guys. Take her easy. See you all next time. Peace out.
Thanks a bunch for coming. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got some good information. Hopefully, see you next week.
Yep. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We'll see you.